Men dominate tech. You can see how this plays out at companies like Meta and Google. And when you look at technical roles, like programmers, the split is even bigger. Why are there still so few women in tech? And does it even matter?
There's this belief that women just aren't that good at computing, and so it's natural, almost inevitable, that the industry is dominated by men. If you challenge the lack of women in tech, the response is often, well, how do you know their code isn't just worse?
How do you know that men don't simply code better? And well, how do we?
Where is the actual evidence? If people seem to think that the coding of women is inferior, what if there is an objective difference? I think a lot of researchers have avoided this because there's a bit of trepidation there. Like, who wants to find out that sexism is right?
Because of that trepidation, no one had done this type of research before, so to find out if there's any evidence behind this belief, Siân had to come up with a whole new methodology. Firstly, can you tell an author's gender from their code? And secondly, does their gender matter? Siân went straight to GitHub, the largest community of developers in the world. Here people come together to build open source software that anyone can modify and share. In theory, it's open to all, but Siân found, in reality, women make up less than 10% of contributors. And
even in supposedly anonymous programming forums, changes to code were more likely to be rejected if it was clear that the author was a woman.
For Siân, the fact that changes to code are being rejected just because of gender is really worrying. But why? What difference does it really make if code is only written by men?
If code all looks the same, it is not as secure, which is really a big concern. If we look at the big picture, having these tools written from one singular perspective can have really unknown consequences. For example, women are almost twice as likely to be injured in car crashes because seatbelts are designed on data from male bodies.
Okay, maybe there's a bit more at stake than we realized. For Siân to work out if men are better at coding than women, she needed to find coders, a sample set. Starting with GitHub, Siân found a large sample of users who code using Python. She looked at all the information on their profile, name, sign-in, about me, email, and categorized these programmers into 4 categories: masculine, feminine, anonymous, and ambiguous. So now she had a sample set. Next, to analyze their code. To understand how Siân did this, first we have to understand code as a language. We might think of code as a whole stack of zeros and ones, and yes, there's numbers and maths in there, but it combines writing, reading, interpretation. In other words, it's language. And just like written or spoken language, it has syntax, definitions, statements, arguments. It's susceptible to interpretation and judgment. It has style.
As readers, we often look at the style of text to learn something about the author. The use of slang or formality or certain types of punctuation may tell you more about the text that you're reading than the content itself. And from there we make our judgments, often unconscious judgments about quality. Code is just like any other language. Whether we deem it good or bad is tied to who we think wrote it.
So now we have a sample set and understand code as a language. The last thing we need to know about are linters. Linters pick up the fluff of code. Linters help to improve your code by analyzing it and looking for problems. Now the spell check of the coding world miss a full stop, and they'll be sure to let you know.
In my research, I used this linter called PyLint to generate statistical analysis on this quite complex issue.
And the results?
So I actually found that there is a difference between how men and women code. But I did find that this difference was purely in style of the code, in the length of files, in the use of functions, in the building blocks of a script.
So, do men code better?
No, men do not code better than women. My research empirically proved that the variation in style is not the same as variation in quality. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's worse. And interestingly, my research shows that feminine and anonymous users have comparable coding styles, which implies that feminine users may choose to be anonymous on technical platforms in order to avoid harassment and having their work devalued. It's pretty ridiculous that women are still being forced to conceal their gender in order for their writing of code to have credibility and their contributions accepted to open source. Men aren't born with microchips inside their heads that means that they can interface with a computer better. It is a matter of experience, learned skill, and confidence. And this means that to see any change, we need to see social solutions like actively calling out sexism, actively hiring women, and inclusive practices in programming education all the way through. It is very important that we get ahead of this very singular view that excludes women and minorities from participating in technology.